Hey guys, as you already know, information security has many domains. And with these domains, there are many roles. And so often, people find it very challenging in terms of actually finding that domain or that area that you want to specialize in. And there's also a video on my channel that you can actually gain further insights into that. But if you go to my profile specifically, then my area of specialization has to do with information security risk assessment specialist. That's what I enjoy doing. And you might be asking yourself, if I should venture into this avenue, what is actually involved when it comes down to information security risk assessment? So as you will see then, what is involved in information security risk assessments? So information security risk assessments are critical processes for identifying, analyzing, and mitigating risk on organizations' information's assets. That's very important. So I'll pretty much be giving you just an high-level overview of all that is entailed, and there are many frameworks, standards, processes, various activities that are involved in all of these areas. But at the end of the day, then what I'm passionate about is being able to help organizations to work with the various teams within an organization to manage and to be able to assess and to identify what those risks are so that you're able to apply those controls to mitigate or to address these various risks within that organization. So pretty much in my role, the areas, the things that I do as it relates to information security risk assessment can be broken down into 10 tasks or 10 steps or processes, depending on how it is that you want to look at this. So very first thing has to do with identifying information assets within an organization that consists of the data, the systems, and the people. So very first thing has to do with identifying information assets. So when it comes on to your data, we're talking about, for example, customer information, intellectual property, financial records, and the list goes on. Your systems, you're talking about your servers, your networks, your cloud environments, your databases, and applications. And at times, we often overlook our people. So your employees, your contractors, and third parties and access to sensitive data. Then we move on to identifying threats, which has to do with your external threats. And we're talking about, for example, your malware, your phishing attacks, your ransomware, hackers. Internal threats, whether intentional or unintentional, we are talking about your insider threats, your employee negligence, and also intentional misconduct. Then moving on, we look at identifying vulnerabilities, which has to do with your technical weaknesses, your human vulnerabilities, process gaps. So when it comes on to your technical weaknesses, then we are talking about things such as your unpatched software, your weak passwords, or outdated systems. Then we move on to your human vulnerabilities, looking at the lack of training, phishing, your social engineering attacks. We're looking at your process gaps, for example, poor incident response, the lack of access controls, or insufficient monitoring. Also, in my list of tasks as it relates to information security risk assessment is assessing the risk likelihood. Very important. So I would then have to take those time to look at historical data, for example, looking at review past incidents or similar organizations, threat trends, the threat landscape, consider current threat intelligence and emergent risk. Moving on to technical evaluation, where I assess the ease with which vulnerabilities could be exploited. And all of these can be broken down into various stages. There are various steps and processes that are involved in each of these elements. in order to actually come to that conclusion as to uh, as it relates to assessing risk within that organization. Then we look at assessing potential impact. This is also important. And impact can be broken down into the financial impact to the organization, reputational damage, and also operational impact. So on a financial impact, this is where I look at the costs associated with, for example, data breaches, regulatory fines, and downtime for that organization or business. Reputational damage, loss of customer trust or brand devaluation. Then operational impact that has to do with disruption to business processes or critical services. So quite a lot is involved, and all of this has to be properly documented in that overall process for the organization. And not to mention, this has to be managed. This has to be part of the overall security program within an organization. And then, of course, we look at calculating our risk calculation, which has to do with your qualitative risk calculation. And this is where you combine, when it comes down to calculating risk, combining the likelihood of occurrence with the potential impact to quantify risk. And those common risk methods, or two common risk methods, are qualitative, which many people, organizations, or risk professionals prefer to work with, has to do with high, medium, low risk ranking, looking at your risk matrix. Then you have your quantitative, which has to do with, for example, your numerical scoring or financial impact models. Then also prioritizing those risks. And this is where I then delve into, for example, helping the directives or the management of the organization in terms of making those decisions about the risk appetite, the critical assets, and also urgency. So as it relates to risk appetite, then this is where you have that alignment or align risk prioritization with the organization's tolerance for risk. Your critical assets focus on protecting the most valuable or sensitive information. And urgency addresses high likelihood, high impact risk first. Also, on that agenda of risk assessment or information security risk assessment, then I also look at mitigating risk. And this can be broken down into your preventative measures, where you look at, for example, working with those technical team, your security team, in terms of implementing your firewalls, your encryption, your access controls, and security awareness training. Detective measures, use monitoring tools, your intrusion detection systems and audits. Then moving on to your corrective measures, where you develop incident response plans, your backup solutions, and disaster recovery plans. Then I also look at documenting and reporting. And this is where I then, for example, develop that risk register for the organization, where or guide the security team, depending on whether or not I'm actually acting as a consultant to the organization or I am working in the organization. So this is where you maintain a detailed record of identified risk, your mitigation strategies, and current status. Then your reports, where you provide management with a summary of findings, those proposed actions and resources that are needed to deal with the risks that have been identified. And lastly, in this overall process has to do with continuous monitoring and review. And this is an ongoing process. So in this aspect, then I look at reassessing or reassess regularly. And this is where I would normally, for example, conduct assessments on a periodic or after significant changes, example, new systems or regulations, your adjust mitigation strategies where, for example, update controls to address new vulnerabilities or emerging threats. So working closely with the security team and the metrics. So of course, I would then establish those key performance indicators, your KPIs, to measure the effectiveness of risk mitigation efforts. And some of those tools and frameworks that would be used, that I would actually use in helping me with this overall process. We're talking about, for example, like your NIST cybersecurity framework, your ISO 27001, your COBIT, and the list goes on. And some of those tools that are involved in terms of helping to identify those risks. We're talking about your security team, um, doing those vulnerability scans, your penetration testing, and using various risk management applications to help in these overall process. So quite a lot is involved in this role. And if I should uh, look back at this role, talking about being an information security risk assessment specialist, then these are all the areas that I delve into, looking at the tools, the process, the various resources, applications that are associated with ensuring that I help that organization, working with the teams to mitigate and to manage all of your risk associated with the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of data, not to mention the people that operates within this particular organization or business. So by following these steps, then I'm able to help an organization in ensuring that there is a structured and effective approach to identifying, evaluating, and mitigating information security risk, ultimately enhancing the security posture and resilience of their information security assets. So this is my role. That is what is involved in my daily task as an information security risk assessment specialist to an organization. So if you are thinking about delving into this aspect of information security, which is a broad aspect from information security, then you also have cybersecurity and many other domains. So just thought that I wanted to share this with you. Trust that you've found this valuable. And of course, um, please share this with your friends. I mean, subscribe, and so that you can stay updated for other videos.